What's up guys, SkyKevin here, and today we're going over everything you need to know about how the upkeep of bases works in Season 5, as well as all my findings and research around the topic. We'll get into what method I used to determine everything, as well as the numbers associated with all of it. So, let's get started. So let's talk about Upkeep. This was introduced in one of the previous seasons to the game as a way to stop these mega bases being built around proxy walkers as a sort of shell to keep them protected when the clan wasn't around. There were various tactics used by the dev team to fix things like that by making no build areas around the proxy walkers, and ever since it's remained a mechanic that bases need an upkeep in order to stay on the map. But I always wondered what all these different numbers mean, and accordingly, with Season 5 taking a stance on having more permanent and semi-permanent bases, we want to know exactly what we're dealing with behind the scenes to inform our decisions. Firstly, for this season, there are two different containers, the maintenance box and base maintenance chest. The box has a total of 18 slots and can stack 200 resources each as of making this video, and the chest has 25 slots that stack to 300 each. Interestingly, the maintenance box still has the same name as the chest when you open it. There is no rare version of the box, but the maintenance chest goes up by 40 slots at the green rarity, 45 slots at blue, 50 slots at purple, and 55 slots at gold. The rarity does not change the overall stack size, and additionally, rarity doesn't have any effect on the overall maintenance cost or anything like that. The different types of resources that can be placed in the chest are based off of everything built inside your base. So if you only use light wood walls, it's just fiber and wood. But if you start using hardwood walls, you'll find that you can now place bone splinters and wood shafts into the storage as well. This goes for pretty much every crafting station you put in it. Weapons will also add to this total, but automaton are the only thing I could find that doesn't count towards this upkeep amount. The last thing about the two different maintenance chests is the build area. With the small box, it's an area of 30 meters squared, and with a maintenance chest, the buildable area is 100 meters squared. So generally, we want to keep this upkeep number low, but there are a few factors that determine how much your base will degrade. To determine this, I did a spreadsheet looking at the base size, the number of tiles I used for the base, and the different resources for each integration of that tile. On top of looking at these numbers, I also had to look at the base footprint or dimensions, as there is also this base area factor that needs to be accounted for. In the first test, I stuck within the confines of the base's area and found that the upkeep is based on every single tile. Anything inside the base, regardless of location, as long as it's attached, is affected. Next, I had to look at the upkeep number itself. For every tile you add, how much does that add to your base's upkeep amount? After looking at increments of 10 tiles added to a base, still within the proper area amount, I noticed a pattern where for every light wood I added, each piece would add about 8 wood and 18 fiber to the total. However, sometimes it only adds 7 wood and sometimes only 17 fiber. This pattern didn't make sense to me, as you would think that each piece that you would add on would increase the upkeep by that same constant amount. I realized that technically there is an upkeep cost associated with the maintenance box itself. Indeed, if you build the maintenance chest on a 1x1 tile, you'll see that it adds additional resources to it. I found that the box has an upkeep cost of 1 wood and 2 fiber extra, and so that should be factored into the equation for upkeep as well. So, keeping that in mind, I looked at the overall cost of each tile and weighed the cost of the box along with the upkeep that recorded at 10, 20, 30, etc. tiles all the way to 150. What I found was that if you factor in the overall cost of the box, as well as the overall cost of everything else, you get an upkeep cost of roughly 12.55%. So for example, if you make a base that is 20 lightwood tiles, it will cost 120 wood, 280 fiber, as well as another 15 wood and 25 fiber for the chest. Factor that all in and you get 135 wood at 12.55%, being roughly 16 wood and 38 fiber respectively. If we try this model and go up to the higher values, we're off by around 0.1 to 0.2%, but for the most part, this is a pretty close estimate. Plus, we can see that it's based on the accumulated resource cost of everything attached to the base. So for instance, if you have a single stomping station attached to your base, you won't see Rupuvine in your maintenance chest. But if you add 2 or 3 more, it will be added based on the collective cost of all of them. So generally, every time you're making a base, just factor in everything built inside of it having a daily cost of roughly 12.5% of your overall build cost. Now hold on, because we're not quite finished with the calculation just yet. We also have to include the cost change when your base is considered to be too large. As you'll recall, I was talking about the area of your base and how that plays a factor into things. I had to do a lot of testing with this, and it seems as though the dimensions associated with your base's square footage or square meters is only on the X and Y axis. So, if you build up off the ground, it doesn't actually change the area of your base. It's fundamentally associated with whatever foundations you're placing down. Additionally, if you build a line of foundations and then disconnect them, they are still considered attached and are still associated with that size of base. I did find a bug when I was testing this, and it seems as though the game will update the base's square footage every time you build a foundation piece. If you go too big and then demolish a tile, it sometimes doesn't actually update that the area has gotten smaller for your base, so you'll have to demo multiple tiles for the size to reduce, and then you can build out an extra 1 or 2 tiles just to reach that sweet spot where it won't be too big. Further, when it comes to the square footage area, it's fully based upon, like I said, the X and Y axis. So if you build in a line, you have far less space than if you build a perfect square. If using a small maintenance box, you can either make a 5x5, which is 30 meters squared exactly, or a line, which makes an 8x1, which is considered 29 meters squared, and far less usable area. So what happens if you go over the usable area amount? Well, then your upkeep rate will increase by a percentage accordingly. This increase is based off the overall cost of building materials for your base. Indeed, I was able to test this because if you increase the area penalty enough, you can actually have the stone cost from your maintenance box show up as a material cost after a certain amount of increase. This percent number that you'll see on your base cost goes up exponentially. So even if you build the penalty to be 60 meters squared out of your 30 meters squared maximum, the percent increase will be well above 300% upkeep for that base. If you had a 300% upkeep increase, your base that would normally take 100 wood per day to upkeep will now take 300 wood per day for that same amount of materials and content inside. I didn't necessarily go into the details of the percent increase or what exactly constitutes 1 meter squared, because sometimes the tiles will add 1 to 2 meters to that, and I think it really just depends on the physical size of how the base is built and its orientation. Indeed, when you look at hanger walls, a single wall can account for a larger amount of square footage for your base and easily send you over the top of the accumulated amount. I know the 12.55% number I mentioned earlier isn't exactly correct, and it's probably something more like 12.6 or 12.7%, but it's fairly accurate within probably 500 to 1,000 building pieces for a base. Plus, it's a bit easier for players to remember and for you to tell other people as well. Personally, I hate farming for upkeep, and I find a lot of clan builders like to go overboard with the base to the point where you're slaving away every day just to match the upkeep of your quintessential mega base. Hopefully, with the research I've done here, it gives you a good idea of what factors go into that upkeep and allow you to judge whether it's worth it for you. I didn't go into any timed tests to see how quickly a base degrades and what pieces of that base will actually degrade, but I've got more coming out on Season 5, and there's a ton of new mechanics to go over. Keep in mind with a lot of this stuff, it's subject to change given that they've been updating and patching pretty rapidly now to balance things out, but hopefully it'll help people out for a while to come. Leave a comment down below if you liked the video, and feel free to ask me any more questions on the topic. I always respond to everyone in the comments. That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.